Call to order.
Is Mike on?
There we go. Call to order. I hereby announce pursuant to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act that adequate notice of this meeting has been transmitted on January 24th, 2024 by the Board Administrative Officer to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Township Clerk, and has been posted in the meeting room and in the entrance hall in Town Hall, all pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act. Roll call.
Mr. Connolly?
Here.
Mr. Ackerson?
Here.
Mr. Romano is absent. Mr. Fagan?
Here.
Mr. Mon?
Here.
Mr. Emma?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Ms. Plausis? She's over the phone. Here. Mr. Silberman?
Here.
Mr. Brian Dorse? Absent. And Mr. Bell? Absent. Thank you.
At this time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor the military, police, and first responders. Thank you. Okay, going down the agenda, we have no minutes this week to discuss, so we'll go right to the public hearing. Item number 1, adoption of the Township's Environmental Resource Inventory, which shall be an element of the Township's Master Plan pursuant to NJSA 4055D-28. Resolution 2020.
We have to wait with that.
What's that?
We have to wait with that.
Oh, okay.
We'll do presentation first, and then we'll adopt the resolution.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you.
Please.
My name is Randy Rauscher. I'm on the Homedale Environmental Commission. Address 36 Blue Hills. I don't know if you need that. But I'm here to represent the HEC. And tonight we are going to present a final draft of our new updated ERI, Environmental Resource Inventory. As you know, the purpose of the ERI is intended to become part of the master plan and to be used as a tool for decision-making in Homedale. It provides a baseline for where we are today in any decisions we make going forward. The previous guiding document was something else called the Natural Resource Inventory. It's a NRI. The name was changed to reflect the broader scope on the current document. The new document includes everything that the NRI had, plus things like species, native and non-native, noise pollution, contaminated sites, climate and climate change. How did we get here to this point? Last year, the Homedale Green Team obtained a grant from the Sustainable New Jersey and PSEG Foundation, specifically for the purpose of updating the ERI. Then in July, the Township Committee hired the Land Conservancy of New Jersey to create... Sorry?
Yeah. See if you can put your mic a little closer.
Okay.
There you go.
So I'll just pick up from the last year. So how did we get to this point? Last year, the Homedale, New Jersey Green Team received a grant from the Sustainable New Jersey, specifically for the purpose of updating the ERI. Last July, the Homedale Township Committee hired the Land Conservancy of New Jersey to create this new document. The HEC has been involved from day one in reviewing. We did a lot of our own input. We signed off on each step along the way. Tonight, we're pleased to present the resulting product, and here to explain it is Ms. Barbara Heskin-Davis. Ms. Davis is the Vice President of Programs at the Land Conservancy of New Jersey. Ms. Davis has been the project lead for some 200 completed conservation plans throughout the state of New Jersey.
Okay, can you all hear me? I have it as close as I can. Okay. So as Randy said, my name is Barbara Heskins Davis. I'm Vice President of Programs at the Land Conservancy of New Jersey, and I'm a licensed planner. So Homedale Township's Environmental Commission applied for and received a grant to update your natural resource inventory. It was last kind of done in 2000. It really needed a refresh. So what is an ERI? An ERI is basically a book report on the municipality of its natural and environmental features. It's based on the science. There really aren't recommendations as part of an ERI. It's meant to tell you this is what it is and this is what it means. So each one of the chapters in the ERI starts with kind of an explanatory statement. There's a lot of policy information with hyperlinks so that you can go and see where the data is, and you can see where the legislation is that helps to regulate that natural feature. The purpose of an ERI is to complement your master plan. It's meant to be a tool for the planning board specifically, for the environmental commission, and for the public, so that if an application comes in and you have questions about what's on that property, you can look to the ERI, you can look at the maps, and get a general idea of what's on that site. You always have to remember that everything was developed based on the best available data from the state, so it could be right, but it also could be wrong. So it's a starting point, and it gives the planning board and the environmental commission the tool by which to talk to the applicant in order to be able to guide them as to what's needed in order to provide a strong application. So there's 13 chapters in Homedale's Environmental Resource Inventory. As Randy said, it includes everything that was in the 2000 NRI, so the typical chapters: geology, soils, water, hydrology, wetlands. And then we include additional chapters specifically on climate and climate change, air quality. We were asked for Homedale to include a section on noise, and it also includes known contaminated sites. But tonight what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you some of the maps. I'm going to explain them briefly, and then the chair and the planning board will ask any questions that they may have, and they'll open it up to the public for questions. So let's go over, there's 17 maps as part of the environmental resource inventory. We start off with a base map of the municipality. You have 10 municipal parks. Homedale's a beautiful municipality. It really is. Your home support the Swimming River Reservoir. You have 2 county parks. So the base map kind of locates you within the municipality. So the first chapter is on geology and topography. Homedale has a very interesting geological base. There's a ridgeline within the municipality that separates the north and the south. We go through what it means in terms of bedrock geology, superficial geology, your topography, and steep slopes. So your superficial geology is the map on the left, and then the topography is the map on the right. The darker the color, let me just make sure. The darker the color, actually the lower the elevation. So this would correspond to that base map that we saw with kind of that ridge line separating the north and the south. And then the next chapter goes into the soils. This is a really detailed chapter. It's hard to write, and I'm going to be very honest, it's hard to get through in terms of a reader. There's a lot of different soil types within the township of Homedale. If I was living in Homedale, what I'd really want to know in terms of soils is where are my ag soils, agricultural soils, where are my hydric soils, the wet soils, what soils are potentially suitable for septic. And this created a lot of conversation on the part of the HEC. So this is a great example of when general information is good, but when you drill down to the specifics, it may not be so good. Homedale has septic systems. It works in Homedale Township. The NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and their designation of soils say, in Homedale, maybe you can't support septic systems. So that's really the difference when you get information on that global scale and what actually happens down on the ground. And that's discussed in the ERI. Land use, land cover. So The DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, does periodic, every 5 years, flyovers of the state, and it's called digital orthophotography. So they take aerial photographs and they interpret them based on the land use. And the advantage of that is they've been doing it long enough that we have 34 years worth of data, which can provide a lot of information in terms of land use change. And not surprising, the biggest change in Homedale Township is the increase in impervious cover or urban land use within the municipality. And the ERI does drill down into the types of urban land use and that shift over time. One of the things that we're including in the ERI now is what we call the impervious coverage map. So that's the map that's open in front of you. The redder the color, the more the impervious coverage. So we include this specifically because the DEP is going to have funding to help address heat resiliency and climate change. So think about it, it's been hot. If your playgrounds don't have shade cover, it's that much hotter. The gray of the pavement absorbs the heat. Your buildings absorb the heat. It creates that heat island effect, and there's going to be funding to help address that. We include this information so that the municipality has the tools should they decide to apply for grant funding to help address it. As Randy mentioned, we do have a chapter on vegetation. We go over threatened and endangered species. We talk about native species, invasive plant species. Homedale has pollinator gardens. Monmouth County has great resources on native plants. And they also have a good program on how to address non-native species. We talk about forest health. There's the beech tree issues. There's spotted lanternfly, and that's discussed in the ERI. The wildlife is an important component of any environmental resource inventory. In January, the bald eagle was removed as a threat, as an endangered species in the state of New Jersey, which is a huge success. And there are bald eagle nests in Homedale Township, so you should feel really good about that you're helping to support our national bird. So we go over species habitat, wildlife conservation issues, deer management issues, which is really a challenge. And this last item, I'll show you the map. Oh, hopefully you can see it, is vernal habitat. I like this. It's a really rare habitat. It's temporary pools. And the DEP on a large scale identifies where vernal habitat exists and where potential vernal habitat is. And you do have that in Homedale Township. And these are really unique ecosystems, and there are certain species that are adapted to this ecosystem, and it indicates a high quality of that ecology for that habitat. We do go over in detail hydrology in terms of watershed management, surface water quality, your discharges, outfalls. You did have a detailed stormwater study, and your aquifers. With the swimming river reservoir and you recharge the reservoir, this becomes critically important for the municipality, and the HEC spent a significant amount of time reviewing this chapter, making sure that we were correct and that it was highlighted the way it should be. So these are just some of the maps that were included. We have the surface water map. We have your bedrock aquifer map. Aquifer recharge potential. The redder the color, the less it recharges your aquifer. And an aquifer is a groundwater water system that helps provide drinking water for the municipality. Then we have public wellhead protection. This data is very old, and I can't seem to get newer data. It's from 2015. We include it, but I'm really starting to think that it's just too old. And the reason I include it, and like I said, I may not anymore, is because a public wellhead, if you think about it logically, you have a point where the water is drawn out in order to service public drinking water supplies. So whatever services that point is important for the water quality. So it's called time of travel, and they have 3-year time of travel to that point, 5-year, etc. So we include it because that time of travel does fall within Homedale Township. So until the state updates it, we continue to include it, but we do have a caveat that the information really hasn't been checked in quite a while. We have a wetlands chapter that identifies where the wetlands are. I would say this is probably the most iffy part of the data. This is state data. This is to give you an idea. It does not substitute for a letter of interpretation or a wetlands delineation, but it'll give you an idea. So it's not uncommon that you'll have a parcel and you'll say there's a wetland on it, but it's not showing up on your wetlands map. That's perfectly acceptable. We have riparian and flood zone areas. We talk about where flooding has occurred. Homedale did do a stormwater study. We talk about local flooding issues. And like I said, we have a climate chapter which talks about the trends in climate data. It's been getting hotter. We've been getting less snow. The events are getting more severe when we have them. So it talks about that. And climate change, the effects of climate change, the heat island effect, mitigation and resilience, and then state and local efforts. Again, we include this chapter because there's going to be funding tied to it, and I want to make sure Homedale is in the right place. Air quality in terms of the criteria pollutants. Noise, again, we were specifically asked to look at noise, so what some of the local issues are, what the state and county health regulations are, and your local noise ordinance, with hyperlinks to where that information is. And then known contaminated sites, where we talk about the sites, we map them, what the right to know is, and the groundwater quality standards. This is very much a picture in time. We date the map, we date the data, and to give you an example, when we did the first draft, Homedale Township, somebody went onto the state website and came back as a reviewer and said, the information's different, and they're right, because we had gotten it 4 months earlier when we wrote the chapter. So we updated it again. So it's not unusual that someone may go on the link that's in the plan and see slightly different information. So that's my contact information. You can certainly email or call me. The purpose tonight is for the planning board to review it in order to consider it as an element of the master plan. Sustainable Jersey, which funded this plan, requires that the plan be adopted as an element of the master plan in order for the municipality to receive its grant funding. So Randy and I are here to answer questions, and we thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. I guess this time it's the board questions and comments, right? If anyone has any?
And then professionals.
Oh, you professionals too?
Oh, professionals.
Oh.
But Kate did give their.
Oh, does Kate or Craig have anything to add or ask?
I have no comments.
There you
Okay.
go. Hi everybody, sorry about that, a couple traffic lights were out near my house. So I would just say that, you know, this is a very thorough document. It's been prepared in accordance with basically the requirements for this type of document. It's a great thing for the township to have. It's a, you know, it's a moment in time in some ways, like Barbara was just explaining, but what it really is that it's a living document, and especially for the Environmental Commission, it's really helpful. I will also say that, you know, I'm working on a new open space and recreation plan, and having this be adopted as part of the master plan is also really helpful for that. It saves us a lot of work. It's kind of like, you know, 2 in 1. And so, you know, I know that you've just recently did a master plan amendment, obviously, for the housing element. There's a million other, not a million, but there's, you know, there's a dozen other master plan elements that are part of the master plan. That most of them are optional, and this is one of them. So, you know, besides just Sustainable Jersey's reasoning, you know, I think this is a very good thing to have as part of the master plan. And so that's all that you'd be doing tonight. It doesn't make any formal policy changes at this time, but it just informs the township's planning efforts going forward.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, okay, Wes.
Now, I was familiar with the 1980 and 1990. They weren't called the RIs, but they're very boring booklet. I think you did a great job in the revision. The photos were a great addition. I know that they were credited to Steve Strickland, Janet and Larry Jackal, and Chris O'Connor. many of the local, and it makes it a lot more colorful and interesting. The two things that interested me were the surface water discharge on page 60 and table 13, and those are essentially our private sewer systems that discharge into our streams, so that was interest to me. Further, the wellhead protection that you mentioned on page 68, map 14, shows where our underground drinking water is drawn from. I never knew that before. And those wells are located between Windswept Road and the railroad tracks. And you see them clustered there. The old maps were static. The new maps that you give are excellent in terms of being able to drill down into specific lot and block numbers, and gives you a very a good clarity. So I think you did a great job in producing an excellent product, and thank you.
Anyone else on the board have any questions or comments before I open it to the public? No? Okay, I guess at this time, we'll open it up to public for questions, right? For questions, so if you want to ask a question, come forward, give your name and address this time.
He's got
Come on up. Yeah, just. Yeah.
Pradeep Janji, 38 Takalusa Drive. I was just wondering, from an action standpoint, is there anything in this document which is in stark contrast to the master plan?
A
Are there any
closer.
contradictions, like housing being put into places where there should be no housing?
No.
No. Okay, so okay.
So what he asked was, and tell me if I misrepresented, what he asked was, does the ERI work in conflict to the master plan? Does the ERI say you should not build X, and the master plan says you can build X? And the answer is no, because the ERI does not go into any planning type of recommendations. It really just talks about what the natural features are and where they're located.
Yeah, it's more informational, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to see is whether, a lot of work has been done.
Sorry, a little
Besides
bit closer. Microphone
Sorry.
closer.
It's very good work, obviously.
Well, yeah, right now we're at questions,
So that's my question. My question is, how will you use this document, right? How is it, meshed together with the master plan so that any projects coming forward will take into account what this document says?
Okay.
So is that used very actively when you entertain new projects?
Okay, Barbara. Or Kate.
I will just say that every application in Homedale goes before the Environmental Commission, that comes before a board, and this is the Environmental Commission's document, so they will continue to review applications as they always have thoroughly, and they'll just have this document as an additional resource. And also, most of this is state controlled, et cetera, but it's the Environmental Commission which already reviews all applications.
Right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this document is really, once again, just informational about the topography and the town. It's not really giving guidelines for anything, correct? It's just.
Correct. So the document gives you information so that when an applicant comes in, you have the general idea of where that property is, where it falls with respect to topography, your water supplies, what its soils are like, so you can ask informed questions, you and the Environmental Commission.
Okay. Anyone else have a question?
I have one quick. Randy, what is this a revision of an earlier one, or is this a new document?
Well, it builds upon, it builds upon the one that's 20X years old, and the data is fresh.
Right. And when did the HEC bring in the land conservation company to do the final draft, or were they involved from the beginning?
They were from the beginning last year. Yeah.
And where are the bald eagle nests?
I don't think we can say that, can we?
Okay, all right, so public comments at this time, right? So I'll open the floor to public comments, if anyone has any. Going once, Okay. All right, public comments are closed. So now I guess. Right. All right, so do we make the motion, right?
Yes.
They want to make a motion to adopt?
I would move that the ERI be adopted.
Second.
As an element of the township's master plan.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so this is about Resolution 2025-06 of Homedale Township, County of Monmouth, approving township's environmental inventory as part of the master plan.
So we actually want to move to actually adopt this resolution.
That is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Connolly,
Yes.
Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Mr. Fagan,
Yes.
Mr. Mon,
Yes.
Mr. Emma,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Plausas,
yes,
Mr. Silberman.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution 2025-06 was successfully approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'll give them time to leave a little bit there. And in the meantime, I'll read item number 2 on the agenda is PB 2024-D, Chabad Jewish Center of BCC Inc., 816 Homedale Road, Block 29, Lot 35, R40B Zone, preliminary and final major site plan. Applicant seeks a preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct a 15,053 square foot house of worship building, along with a 5,129 square foot parsonage, rabbi's residence, along with related site improvements. We'll just wait for them to get settled.
ready, Mr. Chair. Good evening, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jennifer Krimko from the law firm of Anso, Grimm and Aaron, here on behalf of the applicant. And I did look at my notes and noted that Mr. Connolly, the chairman, and Mr. Ackerson were not here in December, and I just wanted to confirm that they did listen to the tape and sign the certification, so everybody's eligible tonight.
Well, I can speak for myself. I did.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I have it here. Fantastic.
All right. Do we swear them in, Marty?
We will. We have-
Okay.
we have to
Swear the professionals, yes.
How many witnesses tonight, Jennifer?
Tonight, if we can get through them all, I'll have 3.
Start with your engineer. and-
My engineer, my traffic engineer, my architect.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So I have them all come up
since
together?
We turn the calendar and we have new professionals. We can swear everyone in together if you want.
Okay, sure.
Make it easier.
And I'll introduce them and qualify them,
At the time.
right, once we get started.
So if everyone swear or affirm that the testimony they're about to give with regard to this matter tonight or any future hearing is the truth and nothing but the truth. So for the record, our professionals have been sworn in as well as the applicant's 3 witnesses tonight.
Great, thank you very much. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Where we left off at the last meeting was A5. We did make a new submission, and as was the board's practice, I'm not going to move anything that was previously submitted in as evidence, just the new items, or the exhibits. Is that right, Marty?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to move as A6, a site rendering with today's date on it, and I do have copies to hand out to the board members if they want to see them closer, and we do have them to put up on the board for the I'll do it. You put it up on the board.
Thank you.
And while we're handing that out, A7 is the same color rendering overlaid on a scanned out or zoomed out aerial. I believe one of the board members or members of the public at the last meeting had asked us to present that so they could put the proposed Chabad in context with the neighborhood. And so that's going to be A7. And just by way of background, at the last meeting,
Do you have a hand after that one?
oh, we do, I'm sorry, Marty, thank you. I'm so eager to get going.
If Kate, they should Kate it correctly.
I got it. Let's start with Mr. King. This is a new one. Thank you. And at the last meeting, we only got through our one witness, which was Andy Comey, our licensed engineer, and there were quite a few questions from the board as well as the public. As a result, we went back to the drawing board, so to speak, to address all of the comments from your previous professionals' review letters, and then we had an opportunity to meet informally with your current professionals as well, to go over new issues that they saw that should be addressed. And as a result, we made quite a few changes to the plan. It's still remaining, thank you. Excuse me, the use remains the same, the building size remains the same. It more has to do with the additional stormwater management investigations as well as some shifting around of the development on the property in order to accommodate some of the concerns from the public. Andy was sworn at the beginning of the hearing and at the last meeting. He remains under oath. And I would like to turn it over to him to go over the exhibits as well as walk you through the changes to the plan over the prior meeting.
Okay. So referring to the site plan rendering that was just introduced, first I'll go through the changes, and first with respect to the House of Worship building, the board professionals noted that the building didn't meet a 20-foot setback requirement to any parking area. So to comply with that, the building was shifted approximately 5 feet to the south and 2 feet to the west. And just for orientation, north is actually to the right-hand side of this exhibit. So I'm referring to the building was shifted to the left and up. The biggest impact that had was that the landscape areas to the north and east side of the building were increased or made a little larger, and the paver area, noted as this brown area to the southwest of the building, was made a little bit smaller, reduced by about 800 square feet. Next, moving on to the parsonage, or the rabbi's single-family home. It was noted that this parsonage was required to comply with the House of Worship conditional use standards, which required a 50-foot setback from the property line, whereas the underlying zone required a 40-foot setback. So to comply, we shifted the building 6.5 feet to the north, or to the right, to meet the 50-foot setback requirement. The number of bedroom, other changes with the parsonage, the number of bedrooms was reduced to 7. Originally there were 11 proposed, I believe when we were here back in December. The driveway was reduced in slope. That was in coordination with the fire official. We wanted to reduce the slope for better firefighting access. That also lowered the building by about 5 feet from its prior finished floor level where it was back in December. Since the driveway was reduced in slope, we actually eliminated 2 parking spaces, which were near Homedale Road. Those were only required because the driveway was so steep on the prior plan. But there's still adequate parking for the parsonage, both within the garage and outside the garage in paved areas. With respect to parking for the House of Worship, the biggest change is that the previously proposed 36-space overflow parking area, which was located to the west of the building at the rear of the site, was eliminated. Rabbi Galprin had met with the Citizens for Informed Land Use group, and it was their request to reduce lot coverage. And one way to do that was to remove this overflow parking. That was nearly 12,000 square feet of lot coverage, which was eliminated, and the proposed lot coverage for the site was reduced by 3%, from 25.2 to 22.2%. The total parking for the House of Worship is reduced from 150 total to 117 spaces, which would all be paved now. And the parking requirement is 100 spaces. So we still exceed the parking requirement by 17% with just the 117 spaces that remain.
And one other thing I know, Mr. Chair, is it okay if I use that
Sure.
while we're doing this? And then I'll put it back up for the public? Andy, one other change, I know that it wasn't a change really from when we resubmitted in March till June, but the board, the public had asked about the relocation of the trash enclosure as well. So we actually swapped that and put that over to the south side of the property?
That's correct. So that is on the southwest corner of the property, whereas before it was on the northwest corner. And similarly, we moved the proposed generator, natural gas generator, to that same location.
Okay, and that is in the most remote area as it relates to the surrounding single-family homes?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just one real quickly with respect to parking, 6 electric vehicle make-ready spaces were added. That's at the rear of the building. Those were added per state law, and the electric vehicle spaces actually increased the total provided parking from 117 to 123 because the EV spaces actually count as 2. However, as I testified, we still meet the ordinance requirement without that extra additional increase.
Refuse enclosure, I'm sorry, Andy.
Oh, no, we can jump around.
So
Next.
aside from it being relocated to the southwest corner,
Right.
we also put the masonry walls as opposed to the original wooden fencing. And
That-
that was required by your prior planner.
That's correct. So we had previously we had a conservation easement at the rear of the property, which was 75 foot wide, which extended across the entire width of the property. That's been increased to 136.
Could you show the zoomed out version? so we can see it?
Sure. I'm going to also pull up the submitted site plan. So the colored rendering doesn't show the entire property. It extends a little bit further west or to the rear of the property. This exhibit shows the entire width of the proposed conservation easement, which, as you can see, contains existing steep slopes. It's wooded, and there are wetlands at the rear of the property.
And importantly, that contains the natural steep slopes, as opposed to the man-made ones that we're going to talk about as it relates to our development.
That's correct.
So the intent of the ordinance of preserving these features is being met as they're included within the conservation easement.
That's correct. The conservation easement is 136.63 feet wide because that coincides with the buffer, which is 20%, required to be 20% of the lot depth. That's why it's such an odd number. But that was the intent. With respect to landscaping, as requested at our last board meeting, additional trees and shrubs were added along the north and west perimeter of the parking lot to block headlights. Additionally, more trees were added at the northwest corner between the adjacent residential properties on Longview Drive. In total, 27 additional trees and 118 additional shrubs were added since the last meeting.
Can we just go to the aerial, though, just so the board can understand the context of where we are in relation to those homes and the
Oh, certainly.
trees in between? So we're supplementing, but there's a wooded area that exists there today.
That's correct.
And what we're proposing are evergreen?
Correct, yes.
Can the audience please stay quiet during the presentation? You'll have your chance to speak.
Okay, just moving on, we testified, I testified about lighting at the last time, but just briefly, the light poles continued to be LED fixtures, which will be downward pointing. We'll have no light spillage beyond the property line. I just wanted to point out that we did add 4 security lights, 1 on each side of the building. Those are highlighted with a circle around the red light pole. Those would remain on throughout the night, while the other lights would be turned off 1 hour after closing.
And we would work with the board engineer with regard to the levels of the lighting as to what would be appropriate for security lighting.
Certainly, yes. As far as lighting, Low-level bollard lighting was requested for the parsonage driveway, and those have been added. They're hard to see on the rendering, but there's these small circles on staggered on either side of the driveway. For safety, with respect to wastewater, you'll recall that last time we discussed our intention to propose a sewer pumping station that would connect to the nearest sewer manhole in Homedale Road to the north. Because that requires an amendment to the sewer service area maps, and which is a lengthy process, which we discussed. The plans have been changed to propose a traditional septic system at the rear or the northwest corner of the property.
And before you go through that, that means that the pump station and the pump house that was previously shown on the plans has been eliminated in that front yard.
That's correct.
Okay.
Originally, we couldn't propose a septic system because our projected wastewater flows were over that 2,000 gallons per day maximum for a septic system. So we've modified the design. We talked about that we're proposing less bedrooms in the parsonage, reducing that to 7 from 11 where we were previously. And we've also eliminated the commercial kitchen in the house of worship, which our architect will discuss. But it's now a warming kitchen where food would be prepared off-site, so that wouldn't contribute to additional wastewater flows. The county had requested that we seek a sewer flow determination because there are several different uses, including offices, office space, the house of worship, the parsonage itself. They wanted the NJDEP to make a sewer flow determination before they would approve. So we have submitted that application, and we're currently waiting for that determination.
So should the board approve this, it would be conditioned upon us getting the approvals necessary from the DEP and the county, and if they don't approve or they request changes, we'd be required to come back to this board for any of those changes.
Moving on, as far as stormwater management, which we talked about, actually, real quickly, before I jump, just some more utilities, just real briefly. We added, in coordination with the borough fire official, we added 3 fire hydrants. They're at southeast, southwest, and northwest corners of the building. Additional fire lane striping was also added along the driveway and parking areas as well, along the parsonage driveway, in addition to the main parking lot and driveways. A pad-mounted electrical transformer. It's kind of blocked by this tree, but we didn't show anything as far as electric service last time. We feel the building, although the loads have not been yet determined, we feel that a pad-mounted transformer will likely be required, so we wanted to add it to the plan, and it's shown near a driveway for access, which would likely be in this location, but it may change. We just want to make sure it's on the plan. As far as stormwater management, we discussed last time at length the 2 previously proposed infiltration basins would remain. There were some slight adjustments to their shape, in part due to comments received from Monmouth County. They wanted to make sure that no contours for the basin were within their proposed right-of-way dedication. That's this dashed line running north and south.
Importantly, one of the neighbors across the street had concerns that the water flow from our property was causing flooding on their property across the street. And you had a chance to look at that and investigate as to where this all goes. What did you find?
Yes, we did.
And Craig can obviously concur to this on behalf of the board.
Yes, we had additional survey information acquired on Homedale Road to show where the piping in the county drainage structures were being directed. In fact, we've changed our point of connection to one drainage structure that was more northerly to one that's more southerly, and that pipe actually crosses Homedale Road and enters the beginning of a tributary stream, which travels further south of us.
So importantly, none of the runoff from this site is going to have any negative impact on the neighbors.
It won't, because we still meet the state and township's requirements for stormwater quantity, quality, and groundwater recharge. What's new on the plan as far as stormwater management is, based on some comments from the board engineer, we added an area of porous pavement on the parsonage driveway. That's this darker gray shaded area. And that would collect and treat stormwater runoff that runs down this new driveway before it enters Homedale Road, whereas previously there was no treatment for the driveway itself.
And that's essentially what the DEP calls the green infrastructure, and it's part of the best management process, practices?
Yes, it is a best management practice that qualifies as green infrastructure, and as do the infiltration basins.
And we presented a sign at the last meeting, and as part of our March submission, I believe, we submitted a rendering of the newly designed sign, correct?
We did.
Okay. You want to just call that up while we're talking about its location? Sure.
This is the proposed sign that we discussed last time. It will still be 3 foot high by 4 feet wide and would comply with the ordinance. It's 25 feet from the right of way and actually 55 feet from the paved roadway. And I just wanted to clarify that the sign would be internally illuminated, whereas I don't know if it was decided at the last meeting, and that the lighting would turn off also 1 hour after closing, just like the rest of the lighting, with the exception of the security lights that we discussed.
Right, and when the architect comes up, we did submit computer-generated street renderings. I know that the board and the public was very interested as to what they were going to see driving down Homedale Road, so the sign is part of that, and we'll go over that with the architect.
And of course, the sign is shown on this rendering as a red rectangle, and it would be double-sided, just to clarify.
So there was a question at the last meeting with regard to the access easement, and in fairness to the board, it wasn't shown very clearly on the prior plan, but you have since now shown it in hatching on the south side of our current plan, correct?
That's correct. It's
Okay, and essentially, just so the board understands, we did a deep dive title search and are working with an attorney who specializes in this. The easement is currently of record. By way of very brief background, it formerly served the portion to our west, which was a much larger parcel that was then subdivided into smaller parcels, and roadways were all created. Could you go to the aerial? So those lots behind us on the cul-de-sac and lot 37.01, they were all part of that larger parcel. The easement remains of record as of today. So in an effort to avoid impinging any potential rights in that easement until the title was settled, part of the reason why we relocated everything to the north was to eliminate any development at all from the easement area. So it's no longer implicated by our development. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Realistically, I don't know that anyone could ever use it because it enters into steep slopes and a forest, but because there is a legal right on the property, we wanted to make sure that our development wasn't going to do anything to impede it.
Okay. Similarly, last time we discussed, in terms of environmental, we discussed that arsenic was discovered on the site at levels that exceeded the state standards. So our LSRP, the project LSRP, conducted additional testing, and it was confirmed that the arsenic was in fact naturally occurring, which was what was suspected. An RAO, or a remedial action outcome, was issued by the state DEP, which means that no further action is required, and the site is unrestricted.
And essentially it means that while there's arsenic, it's not contamination. It is naturally occurring there, and it's not considered a contaminated site, and we don't have any restrictions as to the use.
That's correct. Okay, with respect to steep slopes, this sheet, the third sheet in our set, the tree removal plan, was updated to show those slopes in a blue color. Actually, the darker the color is the steeper the slope. The exhibit shows that the majority of those slopes are actually at the rear of the property, which we talked about. And those would be proposed to be conserved in new conservation easement. There are additional man-made slopes surrounding the former residence, which was previously demolished. Those are the ones surrounding the new residence. So steep slope disturbance is proposed, but again, it's only in the areas of those previously man-made steep slopes, and not the wooded natural slopes at the rear of the property, which would be protected. But a variance is required for the disturbance to these steep slopes, because the ordinance doesn't make any distinction between the different types of slopes.
Right, but these slopes are in the area where the site was previously cleared and developed, and from an engineering perspective, we're not going to create any unsafe or issues as it relates to slopes. Everything's going to be, from an engineering perspective, safe.
That's correct. We'll actually flatten out a lot of the steeper slopes in this area.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that's the summary of the changes from the last time that Andy testified. Certainly, he's available for any questions that the board members may have, and then obviously the public.
I'll ask our professionals first if they have anything to ask of this witness.
So I just have a couple of questions. One, as it relates to, I think you called it the DEP sewage flow determination. What does that relate to? They just confirming the calculation of the demand flows?
That's correct. That's what we're.
Craig, closer the microphone,
Yes.
please.
We're expecting a letter that would confirm the sewer flows, that would satisfy the county, and then we can proceed with our application to the county for a septic system application.
And what was the final total flow?
We're just under 2,000 gallons
Okay.
per day.
And
Okay.
it was because it was that close and there was a mix of uses that the county really wanted the DEP to have the final word as to whether or not we qualified. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And while you're exceeding the parking requirement, and this would be more for traffic, but you had, a number of parking stalls before for overflow parking for certain events. Now, is there going to be an issue during those events, or?
Craig, if I could just ask you to defer that to John Ray,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
Yes, sure. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, does Kate have anything to add or ask?
I think that, I appreciate the overview of things that have changed. And I think as far as, just items that were in my letter, and I don't think anything needs to go deep into review at this point for this witness, but just to keep in mind, when you noted that the lights would be on all night, and you said you did stipulate that you'd work with only a few.
Right, just security lighting
Just
would be
security
on.
lights, and you stipulated that you would work with the township if approved.
Of course.
To set as,
Not only the timer, but the
the
illumination.
timer, that's exactly what I was getting at,
Correct.
yes. The illumination to make, so we approve it that it would not disturb any neighbors. That was just something that caught my ear. The rest, I think that Andrew Comey covered and is covered in Craig's letter, so, thanks.
Okay, at this time,
Oh, wait, sorry,
Oh.
just one question. I think this was covered at the first hearing, but, I did, I don't have to certify like a board member. I did review the first hearing, all the testimony of the rabbi, et cetera. But as far as sidewalks, you would be willing to contribute to the sidewalk fund?
Absolutely.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, thanks.
Craig, do you concur that the applicant's contention that the stormwater runoff will not affect the neighbor across the street, Atlantic Tree?
Yes, so I did also review the video, and there was a concern with erosive forces, which is really related to the rate of runoff, the speed of the water. And by meeting the requirements, you're reducing that rate of runoff to the existing system. So those erosive forces will be less than they are in the current condition.
So you concur that
Yes.
it's... Thank you.
Yes.
all right, anyone else on the board have any questions?
The septic, is that combined for both units, I guess?
Yeah, yes, it would be.
And the septic from the parsonage, is that forced or is that gravity?
No, it would make it by gravity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Do we do for questions, comments per witness? Or we take questions, right? Okay, at this time, if the public would like to ask any questions at this time, I'm going to limit it to questions, no comments of the engineer. Please stand, come forward. State your name and address, please. And
Good evening. Ann Wright, 7 Longview Drive. I'm really concerned about the septic, and you mentioned that you eliminated bedrooms and you changed the kitchen to a warming kitchen so that the septic could be done here. The bedroom doesn't create wastewater, though. Only the bathrooms do, so I have to wonder if you eliminated bathrooms. I noticed that there is no...
You asked a
I'm
question,
asking,
I'd like
I
you to
am.
answer.
Okay, all right. My question is, why didn't you eliminate the size of the parsonage or the size of the kitchen? Those were the things
Well,
that,
The wastewater flow in New Jersey for septic regulations is determined by the number of bedrooms.
So that's a state regulation or a county regulation, not one that you made up. You're
Correct.
just following the rules as to how the state and the county regulate wastewater.
That's right.
Craig, is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
and I believe it's because it's more about number of occupants who use wastewater rather than where they generate the
Yeah.
wastewater, yes, so.
right. I understand that. I mean, if you have the square footage, you can just put beds in there now if they qualify. What happens in the future if those do become bedrooms? It's the same square footage. And if the warming kitchen becomes a kitchen, now is the septic tank no longer valid?
Well, we'd be in violation of any approved site plan, and we wouldn't be permitted to, just like, for example, you couldn't convert your house to an apartment or rent it out by bringing a second family in.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be permitted to. We're controlled by the regulations, not only by the state and the county, but also by this municipality.
Okay, so a warming kitchen can never become a full kitchen for
that's-
this banquet facility?
This is not, I object to the characterization as a banquet facility. This
Okay.
is a synagogue.
Okay.
And no, it can never be converted to a commercial kitchen without first coming back, unless one of two things happens. They change the septic regulations, or they come back to this board to put in sewer.
Okay. And one final question. This does not show the wetlands. I saw one of your other pictures. I don't know if you're going to get to that later about the septic being built on top of a wetland. Is that in a discussion later?
I can talk about the wetlands, which are these dotted lines that are shown on any of our existing conditions area. This is an isolated wetland, and we're proposing a GP6 wetlands fill permit for that particular wetlands.
So the DEP is allowing us to fill it. It will no longer be wetlands, and we're not proposing a septic system on wetlands. Is that correct?
And that's
One of the
correct.
draw-
And
oh, I thought one of the drawings that I saw had the septic and the little wetland in the back, that little square wetland. That
oh, in addition as well, this small isolated wetland as well. Yes, that's
where the septic
that's also part of our GP6 permit that's pending with the DEP. Yes.
So just to clarify for the board, Andy, what you're saying is we're seeking a permit from the DEP to fill those pockets, and they will no longer be wetlands. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Any more?
Can I just ask one
Sure.
quick follow-up question? And Andy, that type of permit, the DEP only grants that in a case where they've determined the wetlands don't have the type of value that would require it otherwise, right?
That's correct.
Yes. So it means it doesn't have the kind of habitat or anything like that. Resource value, that's the word. Yes. Okay.
That's right.
So yeah, just making sure, just so everyone knows, you can't just go around filling in wetlands. The DEP looks at it very closely.
Very much so.
And it's frowned upon unless it's this very specific type of wetland.
Yes.
Can I just ask Ann from 7 Longview what your last name is? Right.
Right,
Right, with the W?
W-R-I-G-H-T.
I figured you were the other half,
She's
but I
connected
just
to me,
wanted to make
yes.
sure.
So.
State your name. and
Yeah,
address,
George,
please.
I'm sorry, George Wright, 7 Longview Drive. I wanted to ask the reason for moving from the sewer to the septic. Why are we doing that?
Well, we talked about that. There was a very lengthy process for proceeding with a sewer map amendment. We talked about that last time, and we decided the best course of action here would be actually to seek a septic system and reduce the flows in order to be able to provide a septic system.
And
So-
also, if I may. So
Certainly.
Also, Andy, one of the concerns that was expressed by the board and many members of the public was if we were going to do sewer, we were going to have a sewer plant potentially within our front yard. And it appeared that many of the board members, as well as the public, were objecting to that. So rather than force that issue, no pun intended, we had decided to alter the plan to convert it to septic to avoid having any of those accessory structures in the front yard. Is that correct?
That's also correct, yes.
So my sense about all that is that the primary objective is it's going to take you more time, too much time for you to get the sewer connection, and so you're going to go to the septic because it takes too much time. Is that the right perception?
It's part of it, part of the reason.
Okay. Do you consider a septic inherently more dangerous or more prone for leakage or more prone for problems? I know at least on Longview, every sewer system in Longview has failed and been replaced.
Mr. Chair, he hasn't been sworn, and he's making.
I know.
No,
I'm
I thought that was a
I'm
question.
asking a question.
He was
I'm
asking a question.
There's not one properly designed, and this hasn't been fully designed yet. We're just proposing a location.
No, okay. I was just asking in general. Do you consider the septic a more dangerous and more prone for leakage than the sewer? The sewer connection being.
I would
more-
object to the word dangerous, but
Okay, I'm sorry. You pick a word. What word do you?
no, when properly designed, there's no issue. There should be no issue with it.
They'd be
with the septic
equivalent, you
system.
think? Yeah.
What was that?
I said he said they'd be he said they'd be equivalent.
I don't think that he said it would be equivalent. I think he said that if it's
Sorry.
properly designed,
If
there
it's
should be no
properly
issues.
designed.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Yeah.
And I just want to let the board know and the public know, if the township made application to expand the sewer service and included our property within the sewer service area, we would be happy to hook up to sewer. The property is not part of sewer, so right now our only option would be to put it on septic.
Okay. Any other questions? Come forward.
Hey, Sean Bonney, 5 Longview Drive. Sean Bonney, 5 Longview Drive. 5. B-A-N-I. B-A-N-I. What was the flow rate for the septic before the design change?
Oh, I believe it was 3,950 gallons.
It's about almost
Some-
4,000?
Something to that effect, yes.
And what's the flow rate in the new design?
I think we were 1950, yes.
So you cut it by more than 50%?
Yeah, I believe so. The kitchen was the big factor in that calculation. So eliminating that really allowed us to drop that rate.
So you're
The
saying
bedrooms as
changing
well.
Okay. So changing from a full kitchen to a warming kitchen decreased the flow rate of a 20,000
Yeah,
square foot combined facility by 50%?
The 15,000 square foot house of worship, I believe, was 900 gallons per day, based on 3 gallons per day for each of the seats. That's my recollection. That wasn't the largest contributor to the sewer flow.
What are the largest contributors to the sewer flow?
The commercial kitchen was probably the largest contributor.
And you mentioned the occupancy changed for the primary residence?
Yes, from 11 bedrooms to 7.
Has the planned occupancy of the structure changed, or the number of bedrooms? Because presumably the family size hasn't changed.
Well, there was testimony at the last meeting with regard to the family and having visitors come and stay here in guest rooms. So the guest rooms were eliminated, so we're not going to have that luxury anymore.
Okay. And what is the typical size of I'm looking at the map, like the typical size of a septic system for this facility?
It would vary based on the specific soil testing, which has to be done. We've done preliminary soil testing all around the site, but not at this specific septic location.
And Andy, that's not something that we present to the planning board, that's something we present to the county board of health, right?
That's correct. It needs to be designed by a geotechnical engineer.
Is the septic design also based on the peak occupancy of the combined structures, like during a high holiday special events?
There are flow requirements based on different type of usage. Bedrooms we talked about. The house of worship has a requirement as well. So it's not about peak. It's just there is a number per seat, a number per bedroom, and
There's very specific formulas for determining that. They can't guarantee they're not going to have 20 family members over at the house one Friday night or whatever the case may be. It's based on what the rules dictate, and the DEP will review it, and they'll provide whatever DEP requests, right? Great.
Yeah, my question is mainly around the assumption of the peak capacity. So if it's a 50% reduction in the flow rate, there's 300 seats in the facility, there's full-size classrooms. What's the peak capacity of this facility, either from a fire or safety standard?
So it's a house of worship, so we looked at that standard. Those uses you're speaking of, classrooms, they wouldn't occur at the same time. So we're bound by the number of seats for the house of worship. That would be the maximum for that building. Again, since we've eliminated the kitchen portion.
But again, an architect is testifying, and she can offer what the fire code occupancy is. But again, occupancy of the building is not relevant under the septic requirements. It's based on, in a house of worship, the number of seats for prayer, and in a house, the number of bedrooms. No different than if you have 3 bedrooms in your house, and your septic is set up for that. You could have a party with 100 people. You don't have to upgrade your septic for that.
Makes sense. Thank you. I mean, the essence of the question was septic was designed in this area for a lot of reasons to limit kind of development. So understanding the assumptions around the size and the peak capacity.
Yeah, let's limit it to just questions, please. Thank you. Yes.
Angelo Viterulis, 17 Longview Drive, Vitoroulis. My first question would be if there's a perk test being done for this property to authorize the sewage.
Wait, can you speak up a little? I can't hear you.
Is a perk have they performed a perk test for the system?
You just got to.
Put it any closer, I'll swallow it. I don't know. It's not working, you know. Is a perk test has been anybody did any perk test to see how the water seepage, if it's okay, if the ground's okay for the sewage system, for the septic tank? Have they done any test?
Yeah.
There's been many geotechnical test pits and borings done on this property, mostly for the stormwater system. There was an investigation for septic early on, but not at this specific location. We do have to get to do additional tests at this specific location.
And the county won't approve it until we do those tests and show that the perk is appropriate.
The tests have to be performed under their direction. They have to witness the testing, and we would do that as a condition of approval.
And that's something typically that happens after we go to this board, because that's more of a construction type thing.
Yes.
And if the perk test fails, what are you planning to do after that? Because if it fails, you won't get approval, I assume.
Correct. And if we can't design the septic system to be, a much larger field, then right, we'd have to come back.
Well, either the project couldn't go forward, or we'd have to come back and amend it to a smaller scale.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now maybe a question for the board, and if I'm able to ask a question about the traffic.
Well, traffic, we'll wait for the traffic engineer to come up. They haven't testified yet.
So I have to come up again to ask the question?
You're going to have to sit around and wait, yes.
Okay, let's see. Okay, now another question for the planning board. What the township has to gain about approving this building as far as it's going to
That-
cost?
No, that's not for this meeting, so.
What kind of meeting is this?
We're discussing the application. It's not
Well,
about what the town has to gain. We're here to review the application and discuss it
And
with our
how-
professionals.
How can I get the answer to that?
So,
Like, what I have to do?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, couple things. The first one is, I didn't object because I'm trying not to and let the public speak, but it's not appropriate for the public to ask the board questions. They're supposed to be asking the witnesses questions. But to answer your question, we don't have to show a public benefit to the town because the town, through its ordinances, has already deemed this to be a permitted use at this location. So the governing body has already decided that this use is appropriate here. I could certainly defer to the planner to explain that differently, but I think the way you're asking the question is more in the context of a use variance, where you want to bring in a use that isn't permitted, and you have to show that there's a benefit to the public good. In this particular case, this is already zoned for this. So, for example, when you built your house, or whoever built your house, you didn't have to prove that it was a benefit to the town because it was already zoned as that. We're zoned for this. We're not asking for any relief to allow the use here. Did I put that correctly?
Yes,
Oh,
that's what I would say, and sir, I'm the board planner. This is a church, a house of worship, is permitted as a conditional use in this district. What that means is that if the applicant meets the conditions for that use, which they have in this case, it is permitted in the zone. The board has the authority to review the site plan, which is why they're here, and the applicant is also requesting a few small variances, such as the steep slopes that you just heard about. But the use itself is permitted here, and they meet the requirements. So the board's purview here is this review of the site plan itself. No one has to make the case as to, the benefits outweighing any detriments. They don't have to show, because the township committee, through their zoning, over, I don't know how long it's been in place, but a church has been a permitted use in the zone for a very long time.
Okay, that's my first time here. I'm asking a question.
Sure.
I'm not familiar with how you guys doing that every day. And it's your
Well,
it's your
that's why
profession.
we're here to try to
And
answer your
that's why I asked the
questions.
question. Okay, thank you.
James Shaherlis, 811 Homedale Road. With regards to the no longer using a sewer system and going to the septics, do you not need a water quality amendment to do so?
I'm sorry, here.
I'm sorry, could you explain water quality amendment? You mean a sewer service area map
No,
amendment?
the way it was described to me from
Okay.
the DEP was that if you're not going to do a sewer system, being that there is wetlands on the property, if you're going to do a septic system which is going to drain into the soil, you need to get what's called a water quality amendment to move forward with doing a septic system.
Okay. And we will, of course, obtain any and all approvals from the DEP and Monmouth County for the septic system.
That's if you get approved for it.
Correct.
Okay.
Of course.
So that leads me to my question for the board then. 3 years ago, I put in for a permit for a deck in my backyard. I did not show 12, just hear me out. This is going to go somewhere. I did not put in 12 drawings of the bolts going into my ledger board, and my first application was denied. At the beginning of this meeting, you said this is the final hearing for this application approval.
I don't
No,
think anybody said
I don't
that.
think so. I said it's a
In the very beginning of the meeting.
final plan.
That's just the
Okay,
title of what
okay,
we're seeking.
I apologize then. I misunderstood when I heard it. This is the final. And
No.
I'm saying, how are we having a final if we don't even have
No,
answers to all
we're
these
just here to potentially approve the plan so they can move forward. And to help save time with all the discussions about septic and waste, they're gonna have to do everything and anything the DEP, the town, and the laws and rules have to follow to the letter of the law to get that thing approved. And if it doesn't get approved, that's gonna be on them, then they're gonna have to rectify it. It's as
Understood.
simple
Like
as
I
that.
said, I misunderstood the opening statement that this was the final, this
Yeah.
was gonna be the
But,
final
Mr.
hearing.
Chair,
I apologize.
Just
Sure.
one clarification, just so you understand, and I'm sure that Marty and the chairman can confirm this. Typically, the site plan review is conditioned upon a lot of other details being done. So, for example, we won't have the DEP approvals when we ask this board to vote. We won't have the county planning board approvals when we ask this board to vote. The municipal land use law is very specifically set up that says this board has to act within a certain amount of time and condition any approval on us going and getting all of those. So the septic details and the water testing for septic, that would all be done post-approval. So this, if we can get through it, this may be the last meeting, but nobody said this was the final meeting. But as is typical, none of that would be presented to this board because they don't have jurisdiction over it. Only those things that this board has jurisdiction over is what we presented. For example, all the stormwater questions that Craig had asked us, because that's something that this board regulates, we provided. All of the on-site traffic information and parking, that's something this board regulates, we provided it. But there are things that other state or county agencies regulate that go to them only after this board acts.
So this could be approved without knowing what we're having for a waste treatment?
No. Once again, look, you know, this is just, it's a procedural thing. They can't start what they need to do until we say start, because they're not going to waste their energies coming up with something that we don't approve. It's still incumbent on them to do all their due diligence and file all necessary paperwork and get all necessary permits and do all necessary testing to do what they want to do. And if they don't, then they can't go back. They can't do what they got to do. And then they go back to the drawing board and they would have to present a new plan to us.
And Mr. Chairman, if I would just add one thing to what Ms. Krimko said, is that when she says approval, that's an approval by the planning board. In any application, there are many steps that have to happen after that. And in this case, those are those things such as outside agency approval. And until those all come back, until the township professionals see all those approvals and sign off on them, you know, and see that they're there, the plans are not finalized, they're not signed off on. No one can get a building permit, no one can get a zoning permit, anything like that. So it's not like they can start building this without that. They're just getting this planning board's approval of their site plan. There's many, many other steps that happen in between that.
And also, this is the same process typical for everything that occurs in town. If a shopping center's built, if a subdivision's built, nothing unique is happening here. For every development that happens, this is the process, either at this board or the zoning board.
Understood, and thank you for clarifying that, because
Yes.
that was one of my big concerns, was that the project begins.
No.
We've seen this before. A foundation gets put in, and it sits there with stagnant water in it for 5 years because something got hung up. So
No.
that's my concern.
No, we're going to be required to post bonds, not only with the town, but also with the county.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Come on up.
Hello. Hi, Sean Dickert, 810 Homedale Road. I just moved in, or haven't moved in yet, but just closed on the property just north of yours. I saw the previous owner was here a few times, so trying to get caught up. This actually wasn't disclosed to us when we went through the home buying process, so I'm just finding out about this less than a week ago. First question would be... No, it's okay. We're dealing with it. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to come out. So first question is, and this came up before, is the idea of a fence on the adjoining property out of question to reduce things like, you know, like car lights and things like, you know, noise pollution?
When you say on the adjoining property, we can't put a fence on your property?
Correct. But at the end of yours I think the way it was phrased before was at the end of your property or somewhere on your property, then with a row of trees after that between the residences and your property to maintain the sight lines of, you know, what we see currently.
I mean, we like we testified. I mean, we've added additional trees and shrubs to block the headlight screenings. We don't have a fence because the property line has existing trees that we're trying to maintain.
So in order to put a fence on our property line, we'd have to cut down trees.
Or move in further into your property line, I suppose. But is it possible to get a rendering of like what this would look like from the side? How high are these trees? How high are the shrubs? Like, what am I going to be looking at as the owner of the adjacent property?
Let me just start by saying anything's possible,
Mhm.
but we don't need any variance relief if we needed a setback variance to your property line, for example, and we needed to convince the board to let us put everything closer to your property than the ordinance allows, then we'd have to demonstrate that there's no negative impact to your property, and we might present exhibits such as that. But we meet the letter of the law as it relates to our setbacks, the buffer, everything we're putting there is exactly how the ordinance contemplated. So while we did bring a rendering from the street, no, we don't have a rendering from your property. And nor do we intend to present one, because we don't need any variance relief as it relates to that property.
I understand that you don't need it, but in terms of being kind of like a friendly neighbor and letting us see what it would look like, it would be maybe a nice courtesy, I suppose. But I get that there's a procedure for this process.
No,
Next.
and just so you understand, it's not that we don't want to. Remember that, you know, each thing you're asking for is a very big expense. We'd have to come onto your property. It would have to be done in advance. I'm sorry that you didn't know about this before you bought the property.
No need to.
You know, I'm not sure. In any event, but again, we can't possibly do it from every angle. If you're asking for a fence at some point along the property, that's something that we would consider, and we can talk to you about that. I'm just suggesting we're not going to go to the time and expense of the rendering at this point, but I can certainly talk to my client about a solid fence along at least your property line to block the view interspersed with the trees.
Okay. I mean, the reason I ask about the rendering is because if it blocks the car lights and, you know, the noise pollution stuff, then the fence isn't needed. But
A
yeah.
fence will most definitely block it, number one, but
No,
number
no,
two.
I'm saying if the shrubs and trees block it, then I wouldn't, you know, be pressing any fence. That's what I'm
Understood,
saying.
but if I set the precedent of coming to your house and preparing a rendering, then everyone around us is going, so again.
Maybe they should have the right, I would assume, but
They
that's
d-
fine. I understand. Okay. Next question is, my understanding was there was no plan for a sidewalk, but then I heard mention of a sidewalk fund. Is there plans for a sidewalk?
No, and this was covered at the last meeting, so I'll indulge it a little since you weren't here. The topography along Homedale Road is not appropriate for a sidewalk because of the guardrail. So what the ordinance requires is that if you don't put you're required to put the sidewalk in or pay into the fund.
Okay.
So we're paying into the fund the cost of the linear foot of the sidewalk, and then that goes to the township to put sidewalks elsewhere.
Understood. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Two questions, and one maybe if they can get back to me, but has any study been done in terms of runoff towards the residences and not towards Homedale Road?
Yes.
It has been? Okay, so we shouldn't expect, like, you know, more drainage than has historically been seen on our property or something? More runoff, yes.
Yes, I mean, we looked at all sides of the property. I mean, I could just say with specifically your property, the contours are actually heading.
It slopes towards you, yeah.
Towards our detention basin that we're providing. So, no, I would not expect there to be any change to runoff to your property specifically.
And the stormwater management regulations don't permit it. We're not allowed to create more runoff to your property than exists. That's why Craig is here on behalf of the borough, on behalf of the township, and the board to ensure just that.
Okay. Last question relates to construction. So we moved from the city where there's a lot of noise at night. What does construction look like in terms of timeline, in terms of hours? You know, what are we going to
I'm not sure that's really on point here, but
It's not. We can't speak
yeah.
to that. What we can speak to is that we'll work with the construction department and adhere to all of the ordinance requirements with regard to noise, hours of construction, and the like.
Understood. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to clarify for everyone that to discuss the previous point brought up is that a lot of the things that's being proposed are within the rules. The house is zoned for that, and it'd be no different than if you bought a house and you wanted to put a pool in, and your neighbors are going to complain that you had kids splashing in the pool all day. I mean, there's certain things that they're just like anyone else here. If you want to do anything to your property or you follow the rules, and that's what they're trying to do is follow the rules, right? So, anyone else want to come up? Okay, closing questions at this point. If they want to do comments to the engineer, do the comments at the end.
Comments at the end.
Okay, all right, then we'll hold that. Okay, right. All right, so at this time, if you want to call your next. Sure.